Welcome to Lunchtime Law. I'm your host, Margaret McLean, and this is your daily midday legal briefing where we break down the legal stories, explain what they mean, and separate the headlines from the law. If you're new, welcome. So today I'm wearing my 250th celebration colors, red, white, and blue, and my star earrings. I think they're kind of cool. They're fun, right? So don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already done so, because every day, weekday at noon, I'll translate the legal issues of the day. In the evenings, I'll also have shows, not necessarily every day, but I try to get good guests in to join me to discuss some of the pressing issues or trials or whatever is on the menu, right? In this episode, since I'll be heading to the beach, I'd like to discuss the constitutional issues that are being raised over these beach takeovers. So, I recently did a segment on Fox where they wanted me to cover the topic as we head into the July 4th weekend. I also said yesterday that I would cover that sewage issue that's occurring in the North Shore of Boston and some of the legalities surrounding that. Boy, that sounds like fun, huh? The sewage dump is closing down multiple beaches as well as fishing and shellfishing and causing a significant economic loss. I'll discuss the legal issues involved there. In the meantime, what's happening with these large social gatherings or what they call takeovers? We've seen it. Check out this clip where a Boston police cruiser was set on fire. The Boston PD said that there were more than 100 people involved in this chaotic scene, which occurred on Mass Ave and Tremont Streets at 2 a.m. Two people were arrested, an 18-year-old and a 19-year-old. They were the only ones. Both men were ironically from Rhode Island, not even Massachusetts, and they were arraigned on serious criminal charges in the Roxbury District Court. They were allegedly part of a massive group that coordinates gatherings on social media, and these people arrive in vehicles and use their cars to block off the streets to stop the flow of traffic. In the arraignment, prosecutors said that drivers perform burnouts, donuts, and have illegal street races, often live streaming their activities. Here, the officer's cruiser was being targeted by the group, so when he saw the group surrounding him, he began to drive in circles in an effort to keep people off the vehicle. And several people still jumped onto his hood, while others were throwing fireworks and other objects, rocks, whatever it was. At one point, the officer heard explosions and then noticed his car was filling up with smoke and there were sparks and fire, and it was ultimately completely destroyed. In my opinion, this is just awful behavior. It's a good thing nobody was hurt in this thing. I'm surprised the police officer wasn't hurt. That event took place a few months ago. So now officers are worried about these beach takeovers, and it's happening all over the country. It's again a trend fueled by social media, and it has communities worried about the beach takeovers, which again are large organized on groups online that can quickly overwhelm public beaches, leading to fights, underage drinking, vandalism, and all sorts of dangerous conditions. So, in response, the coastal cities and towns are fighting back with more police officers, thermal imaging drones, parking restrictions, and aggressive enforcement. So, here's today's lunchtime legal question: how far can the government go if they're trying to enforce the peace? For example, some governments, cities and municipalities, have turned to social media themselves. For example, in the following clip, there's a public service announcement from the chief of police in Fort Lauderdale, and he gives a pretty stern warning.
You're coming to Fort Lauderdale to cause problems? Let me be clear. Think again. These teen takeover events are not harmless gatherings. They create chaos, put people at risk, and disrupt our community. Fort Lauderdale will not tolerate disruptive behavior. Our officers will be out in force, and we will enforce the law. Those who choose to break the law will be held accountable. If your plan is to come here and cause trouble, make other plans. If you're coming to Fort
Here's my legal takeaway. Cities and towns don't have to wait until violence breaks out before they take reasonable, and that's the operative word here, reasonable preventative measures. They can use their constitutional police powers, which is the authority to protect the health, safety, and welfare of citizens. Legally, this gives cities and towns broad discretion to crack down, and people have little expectation of privacy in public. So, cities and towns can certainly close public parking lots, use drones, patrol with police on horseback like they're doing in South Boston, and the police can monitor social media. No warrant is necessary to view publicly available posts. So, officers can disperse a crowd before violence occurs. If they reasonably believe public safety is threatened, emergency access is blocked, for example, ambulance and police need to get through, and crimes are occurring or about to occur. Failure to comply can result in charges such as disorderly conduct, disturbing the peace, and even trespassing if the area is closed. When someone is arrested for a crime, courts usually ask, were the municipal restrictions reasonable? Were they narrowly tailored? Were they applied equally? Were they based on legitimate safety concerns rather than targeting a particular group? One of the biggest misconceptions is that police have to wait until something bad happens before they can act. Governments have broad authority to take reasonable steps to prevent foreseeable harm. But there are some limitations constrained by the Constitution. Public safety and civil liberties aren't opposing goals. Their interests, the law constantly tries to balance. The use of SWAT teams, tear gas, and rounding up too many innocent bystanders may be taking it too far. For example, there have been significant crackdowns in areas like Hampton Beach, New Hampshire, Clearwater, Florida, where the municipalities are using sweeping zero tolerance policies, like massive deployments of tactical SWAT units and broad based arrests. Some say these harsh tactics lead to escalation of nonviolent situations. So that they're causing the problems, they're making it worse. I guess some of the critics also are asking, is this an overreaching intimidation tactic that actually targets free speech, the First Amendment? Does it criminalize the mere act of inviting peers to a public beach before any illegal activity has occurred? Now, onto that sewage issue. So, one of the biggest stories as we head into the 4th of July weekend isn't just about, the environmental disaster. It's what happens next legally. So, following severe storms last Friday night, a 42-inch sewer main ruptured in Haverhill, Massachusetts, sending millions of gallons of untreated wastewater into the Merrimack River. The following day, crews discovered a second break compounding the crisis. Officials now estimate that between 8 and 10 million gallons of untreated wastewater were flowing into the river every day. I wouldn't want to swim in that. That's just so gross. But for liability to attach, that you have to prove in court if you've suffered damages that there were prior breaks possibly in the sewage system, there were maintenance issues, or maybe reports recommending replacement? Or did city officials know these pipes posed a significant risk that they'd overflow like that and postponed repairs? So there's a little bit of legal digging that you would have to do. Or the city would be lucky if they can prove that this was an extraordinary, unusual storm that caused an otherwise unforeseeable, and that's the operative word, unforeseeable infrastructure failure. So those answers could determine whether negligence can even be established in this type of case. And I know businesses up in the North Shore have been hit hard. Commercial fishermen, shellfish fish harvesters, charter boat operators, restaurants. Think about it. They're all losing a lot of revenue and this is one of the busiest times of the year. People want to be out. So It's kind of hard to ultimately sue and get money. These businesses, first of all, they must submit a formal claim to the city and explore their legal remedies. Under Massachusetts law, recovering damages from a municipality can be challenging. Generally, it's the Massachusetts Tort Claims Act that applies here, and liability is limited to $100,000 per plaintiff. And punitive damages, meaning damages meant to punish somebody, are not available at all. And also, before filing suit, claimants must satisfy a mandatory legal requirement known as a presentment. They must submit a written claim to the city's executive officer within 2 years of the incident, and then the city has 6 months to investigate before a lawsuit can proceed. And any lawsuit must generally be filed, well, has to be filed within 3 years of the injury that you received, or the happening of this. And that's a strict statute of limitations. Even then, businesses face other legal hurdles. Massachusetts law generally makes it difficult to recover pure economic losses, such as lost reservations, canceled charters, loss of clams. And by the way, I am headed to the Massachusetts beaches, not these beaches, but I'm going to Cape Cod, and hopefully there's no beach riots on Cape Cod. But I do love shellfish. I like clams, and I hope that the clams I'm going to be eating aren't contaminated, or I'll be spending an awful lot of time in the bathroom. Of course, this is not a good topic for lunchtime law, but and I think that's where we'll end it. Let's hope there's no great white shark sightings as well, but I'm not really worried about that. I still love to swim. And I guess that's it for today's Law Lunch. If you found this legal breakdown helpful, please subscribe, and then I'll see you Monday for the next edition of Law Lunch with Margaret McLean. And please do have a wonderful 4th of July holiday. I'll see you next week.